What's up guys? Welcome to another exciting design tutorial with UXMate. In this video we are going to learn about components and their variants and properties in Figma. Components basically are nothing but the UI elements which helps us to create ones and use them again and again in all of your design files, projects, or wherever you want to use in Figma. Components helps us to maintain the design aesthetics throughout the file, focusing so we don't need to worry about those common things while focusing on the solution part. So let's jump into the Figma and get started with the components and their properties and variants. So you'd be seeing a couple of objects or couple of basic shapes on the frame. What I'd be going to do is I'll be using them as icons, just the representation of icons. So I'll start making components out of them. I'll give it name, let's say icon 1. It could be anything, I'm just making those for the reference. Icon 2, icon 3, and icon 4. Okay, so we'll be using those icons in our button component, and we'll be creating different states of button using just the components. So I'll draw a rectangle, or better I'd start with a frame. I'll draw a frame here. I'll adjust some border radius to this, let's say 5 pixels or maybe 10. Okay, it looks good. Let's add some stroke to this. So I'll just rename this button, and I'll move an instance of this icon in this frame. Let's just select this and add an auto layout to this, and let's say I want 5 pixels from both sides, and then you can add your text in this. Let's call this button. Adjust the auto layout to align these things in the center. Let's just change the font as well, it doesn't matter. Pop-ins, and let's have around 14 pixels just to look good. We can adjust the spacing as well. I want around 5 pixels. Okay, so this is my button. What I'll be doing, I'll just resizing this a little bit. Let's make it 28. Great, and I guess those border radius are too much rounded here. Let's try with 5 only. So we have this button, and now it is not a component, right? So what we'll be doing, we'll be creating a component out of it. Let's create a component. So I'll just make the B capital for the component name. Okay, what we have to do now, we have to, let's say, create a button where we would be having icon only, and we don't want text. So there are a couple of ways to do this, and we will be going through both of the approaches, but I would recommend the best approach as well, which have less number of components, less number of layers, which helps us to maintain the size of the design file as well. So let's say let's create a variant of this. So I have so it created a default variant for me. I can give it a name. Let's say you can say type. Okay, and by default it is going to be default type. Let's add a variant to this and give it icon only. So now let's what we have to do, we have to simply get rid of this button text here, and it is basically a second variant where we will be having button and icon only state. So when I use this component in my design, let me just have a frame here. So when we use this design in our component, if you see, it has type, default, and then we have icon only. But in this approach, what we are doing, we are creating different variants. Okay, and those different variants are basically nothing but just the different properties, like where we are just hiding the text, or probably would be having only button, like only text, only icon. So let me just create a copy of this. I'll call this text only, right? And then I'll delete this icon part, and then I can use text only as a variant of this. But in this case, what we are doing, we are just getting rid of those different elements, but we are creating multiple components as well, and we don't want that, right? We don't want those different components, because it is nothing but just the change in state of those two options or properties, we can say. Let me also fix the height here, maybe 38. Okay, what I'll be doing now, I'll be creating let me select this icon, and let me create a property out of this. So again, you would be seeing, okay, what if I want to change this icon to some other thing? You can still go ahead and select this inner component and swap this component from here, but we'll create a property here itself on the button. So how we can do it? We can select this icon, and if you see this create instance swap property next to the icon one, we will it would basically create a property which helps us to create a instance swap property where we can swap the instances of the components. So let's create a instance swap properties first here, and then let's call it as a icon, and let's keep the icon one as a default value. Okay, and you can also add preferred values as well. So if you want, you can let me select all those things here, all those 4 icons, which could be your default or preferred values, and icon one would be your default value. Let me just create a property here, and now when you go in your instance, and you don't need to go and select this icon here. What you have to do, you have to select the button only, and you would be seeing, okay, this was a property which we had created earlier type. We don't have anything in this because we have deleted those instances, but we have this icon as a new property here, and now you can select through these preferred icons, right? So it is pretty easy to create components. And now if you see, we have not created those different variants here, like for each icon. It is just swapping one icon. And if you see the layers as well used here, these are nothing but, like, we have 3 or 4 layers, you can say. Like, one is for icon instance, and one is for icon vector, then we have one for text, and a common one group which has this entire button thing. So you can say, like, near about 3 or 4 layers, and that's all. So with this, we can keep on swapping those elements here. So it is pretty easy and straightforward to create such components. Now what we'll be doing, let's say we want icon only instance. So let's select the button text here. Also we would be wanting user to able to or the designers to able to change the text of the component. They can still go ahead and do it by double click and go in this component and change the button text. But let's make a property for the text only, like the text as well. So let's select the text, and then if you see not here, yes, if you see this content, you can create a text, like a content property where you can just, let's say, name it as text and keep it as a button as default. So let's create a property. Now when you select this instance, and on the right hand side you can see what text you want it in, what text you want in the component. You can simply say sign in, right? So it automatically updates in the component. You can give it any name which I want. Try me, right? So with this we can keep on like, we can give this flexibility to the user, where to the designers, where they can simply change the text here itself in the properties of the component. They don't have to go into the nesting of this component and change it here. So let's say now we want to create icon only or text only properties of the same component. So what we'll be doing, we'll be selecting this icon first, which would be giving a boolean property. What does a boolean property does? It basically changes the visibility of the selected component. It could be for the entire component, or it could be for the elements within the component. Let's select the icon here, and then click on this create boolean property icon next to layer, where you can create let's say icon only. And in icon only we would be having this true, right? Or yes, let's, and then we'll be having text only. Same thing, we'll be go to next to the layer, we'll click on it and create a property, and we'll call it text only. Create a property. So now let's say or you can give better name. Basically, let's just change the names a little bit. Instead of icon only, let's say show icon, and then same for the button, show text. So now you can say like I want like icon only, or I want text, right? So you can create those toggle switches and switch between those properties, and you don't even have to create multiple variants to hide and show those things. Everything is done in a single component itself with multiple properties. So let's say we want to create a hover effect here. What we can do for a hover effect, we can create a variant of this. Just adjust it here. You can have an auto layout for this entire section as well. Let's create an auto layout here, and in hover let's just change the stroke color. Let's have some sort of bluish tone to this, and also change that, or change the text color as well. And now we'll create a interaction here, because we want to show this, or we want to swap this instance of the component only when we are hovering on it. So I'll create a wire between these two. Instead of on click, I'll say while hovering, and I'll say change to type 2. Okay, what we can do here is like let me select this component, let me go to the design tab again, and instead of type, let me call it state. Okay, so now we have a default state and we have a type 2, which we would be calling as hover, right? So we'd be having a default state and would be having a hover state. Now to test this out, we need to go in a prototype mode, and let's test this prototype here. So if you see, now when I hover my cursor on this, it basically changes the color of this button itself, right? So with this, with the variant option and with these different properties, you can create complex buttons or complex elements, which you don't even have to create multiple layers or multiple instances of this, and you can simply swap the things here. Like I don't want this, I want, let's say, this icon here. It would be same thing, still it would be working. It would be changing the color of the text and the border, right? So guys, let's just practice on these components and create various UI elements using components, using those properties. It helps to reduce the file size. It also helps to use those components in all of your designs. And let's say now, what if I want to change the hover color or the color of this button wherever I have used? Let's say I have used it in a couple of frames. Let me just duplicate this. Okay, and I don't want this black color or this grayish tone to my border. I want some, like, I want to change the color of the text here. So what I can do, I can go to my master component and I can select any of these properties here, and let's just go ahead and change the color here. Let's make it red for now. So now if you see, it is automatically updated in all of the child instances of the component. So you don't have to do it manually in each and every design. It is just a single point where you would be changing your properties and it would be updated in all of the child instances of the component. So components are pretty strong and pretty helpful. We can create animations using components, we can create different UI elements using components. So I would recommend to keep on practicing on the components, start using components in your design, and instead of creating multiple variants, try creatively, like wherever you can use boolean or text swap properties, which will basically help you to create the smaller components. When you are if your design system have thousands of components, in that case you cannot afford multiple layers or multiple instances of the component just to do these minor things, right? So it will just unnecessarily consume your file size as well. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed yet, do subscribe now and hit the bell icon, and don't forget to add your comments in the comment section. It will help us to it will help us to bring new videos for you. Thanks for the watching.